Singulators out there. How are you doing today? It's time for another Singularity Podcast. So gather around, grab your coffee, and hang out with me, Mike Bostwick, for just a little while.
You know, I'm playing with my megaphone today because I'm using it in a song that I'm working on right now.
And it's, as you can tell, a lot of fun to talk through a megaphone sometimes. And, what's kind of cool is this particular megaphone has some pretty interesting features, like this one right here. This is like a little alarm button that it has. Check this out.
Yeah, listen to that for like 2 hours and you'll be climbing the walls.
And it also has this other feature. It plays music. Yeah, check this out. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so.
That's enough of that. I'll put my megaphone away. Almost 50 years old and I'm still screwing around with stuff like that. I'll never grow up. I think I've got Peter Pan syndrome or something. But, it's so much fun to play around with stuff like that in the studio. At least for me it is, And I'm kind of like wondering why a megaphone would need to have, music for Elise, playing to you and like for crowd control or something. Everybody calm down. We're going to listen to some Beethoven. Everybody calm down. We're going to play you some Fur Elise and you can just chill out. Okay. No riots. Yeah. I've had that megaphone for a while now. I don't even want to think about how long. Oh, anyway, so what's new with me? Well, what's new with you? What's going on? How you been? Getting things done? Working on stuff and kind of living a life? Things going well? For me, I'll tell you what. We're in August now, so we're starting to get closer and closer to my favorite season, which is, of course, autumn. And, the leaves haven't started to turn yet or anything. But the weather has started to cool down quite a bit. And I don't know about you, but man, it's just, I love it, I love it. I don't mind the heat and I don't mind winter. I really don't, I don't mind snow and all that kind of stuff. But there's something about that in-between season, the autumn, where it's not too hot, it's not too cold. I don't know, maybe it's some kind of like primal thing, like we're kind of like in the back of our minds preparing for winter, preparing to be, shut in a little bit and kind of, it's like the storm is going to come and we got to get ready for it kind of like, and the smells, the air has a certain kind of smell, a certain kind of humidity, even, a certain weight to it. And the sun shines a little bit differently, it seems. And of course, when the trees start to drop their leaves and turn colors and stuff, I'll tell you, here in Massachusetts, it's famous for the leaves in the autumn time. People come from all over the world, really, to see the leaves when they're turning colors here in Massachusetts, because they're particularly beautiful and there are so many, there are so many trees here in Massachusetts. And I'm sure there are a lot everywhere else. Everywhere else I've been, there seems to be a lot, but there is like a really high concentration of trees growing in New England, and that makes me kind of wonder sometimes a little bit about that whole global warming thing and climate change and people are talking about, how, we're running out of breathable air, and, we're threatening the health of the planet and everything. And I don't know. It's like, from my understanding, okay, which is extremely limited, I'll admit it, because I'm not like a botanist or a biologist or something. When we breathe in oxygen, okay, we breathe in oxygen that the trees are producing, okay? And when we breathe out, when we exhale, we're breathing out CO2, right? That's what I've been told anyway. I could be wrong, but that's what I remember learning, right? Well, okay, I live in a place where there are so many trees, okay, that, it's ridiculous. Anywhere you go in New England, the landscape is covered with trees. They're everywhere, right? And it just doesn't make any sense to me. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, when I flew to Las Vegas, I'm flying over the continental United States, and I'm looking out the window of the plane, of course, and there's trees everywhere. They're everywhere. There are so many trees, and they're all producing oxygen. Every single one of them. And I don't know, I just kind of sometimes, I find it really hard to believe in climate change. I guess that's basically the point that I'm trying to make. I know that frustrates a lot of people because they're like, oh, how could you be like that? How could you think that? Science has proven that this is a problem and blah. Yeah, I don't have so much faith in that. I really don't. In fact, if I'm to be honest about it, really, when I hear people talking about climate change, it's like, in my opinion, it's like code for population control, Like, there's not enough room for everybody, and, we need to, change our ways or thin out the herd. You hear people talk like that. It's population control. When I hear people say, oh, global warming, climate change, I just think, yeah, you want what the Georgia Guidestones want, which is what, 500 million people on the planet or something, which would mean that, they need to exterminate, 2/3 of the population. Yeah, nice. Yeah, we'll start with you and your family. Right. Yeah, everybody's for population control, unless it means that they and their family have to go, right? So, like I said, I'm not buying into that whole climate change thing. I really don't. I've tried to, I've researched it a little, and I know what I know from what people have told me, And I know you probably believe in global warming and climate change. I just don't. And who cares? Nobody cares what I think, right? I hope. I hope nobody cares what I think. Oh, anyway, back to that idea of the autumn feeling, I just love this time of year where we're getting ready to go into it, And the frost is on the pumpkin, and you can start smelling the fireplaces, in the neighborhood, and the air gets cooler, and things kind of get quieter at night, and, the wind is rattling the leaves, and I just love that time, Halloween and all that, and just come to life, I love it. I love Christmas too, and Thanksgiving, all those things I do. I love the 4th of July, I like corn on the cob and swimming in the pool and barbecue and, fireworks, doing all that stuff. I love that stuff too, but nothing beats autumn, in my opinion. And I've written about it. I've talked about it a lot. This thing I call the autumn feeling. There's a feeling that comes with the season. And I feel sorry for people who don't experience all 4 seasons. because it's really something I don't think I could do without. I know there's some talk still, about my wife and I moving to Las Vegas, that possibility that we might have to move to help out my father-in-law or, whatever. And, I don't mind the idea really of moving to the desert, because the desert is cool in its own way. There are a lot of aspects to the desert that you just can't get anywhere else or like in any other environment. And it's an environment that I haven't really had too much opportunity to explore. So if I have to move to Las Vegas, if I have no choice, right, it wouldn't be so bad. There are some very interesting things about Las Vegas and about the desert and everything, but I think I would really miss the turn of the seasons, and I think that it's something that I don't want to be kept away from it for too long. I just love it too much. But yeah, that autumn feeling, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you ever get that feeling? It's kind of like when Christmas is coming and you can just kind of feel that feeling. It's like a mood, it's a glow, around your existence for that season. I love it. Anyway, so, maybe over the past year or so, my wife and I have been watching a lot of Turner Classic Movies, TCM, the Turner Classic Movie Channel, on cable. And, I have to say, I've been thinking about this a lot, and this idea of watching classic films. There are so many things about these films that are interesting to me. And I've never been one of those people who was like a big film buff. I don't know a lot about film and stuff. I know some, and I'm interested enough and intelligent enough to get into it a little bit, but I'm not one of those people who would like go to film school, and like study that kind of thing. But I have an appreciation for those older movies that I guess I didn't really have when I was younger. Why? And like, what am I talking about? Well, I'll give you an example. There was this movie that we watched. It was called A Majority of One. And I believe it came out in the 50s. And it starred Alec Guinness, I believe. And it was a really good story. Basically, the story of the movie was there's this older woman. She's living in New York City by herself. She's recently widowed, okay? And her daughter and her daughter's husband are going to take her with them to Japan, okay? And this idea is problematic for this older woman because her husband, who was in the military, was killed in World War II, and he was killed in Japan. So she's prejudiced against the Japanese. And so she's kind of forced, against her will, because she has to go with her daughter and her son-in-law to Japan. And, in comes Alec Guinness. Of course, it's kind of funny because he's dressed up like a Japanese guy. But like, I was saying to my wife while we were watching it, it's like, this is like a movie that was made before they could just have a Japanese actor, play the part. It's so silly, because Alec Guinness doesn't look Japanese, okay? Not at all. I mean, they tried, I guess, but, like I said, the world has changed, thank God, right? But nevertheless, Alec Guinness did a great job in the movie, despite the makeup. And basically what happens is a very interesting thing takes place where this older woman kind of meets up with Alec Guinness's character. It's obvious that they're going to become love interests. You know, they're going to fall in love. I mean, I guess that's the plot, right? But what's even more interesting is that the daughter and the son-in-law, okay, of this older woman, they kind of treat her like she's stupid. You know, it's like a form of ageism or something, right? Like we get this thing in our head with older people, elderly people, I should say, that they're not intelligent, okay? Like they're dim-witted, or like they've lost some of their faculties, you know? Their cognitive functioning, you know, due to age. And that's a mistake. It's a myth, and it's not true, okay? And I learned that from my father-in-law, okay? You know, because my father-in-law is a really extremely intelligent guy. But anyway, this movie is kind of illustrating the difference between how American children regard their elders and how the Japanese children regard their elders. And they're two very different things, okay? The American youngsters tend to be condescending and dismissive of the elderly, and the Japanese youngsters in this movie, okay, tend to revere their elders and go to them for advice and hold them in high esteem and high regard, okay? And that may not sound like a big deal or something, okay? But you don't see a lot of that kind of thing in modern films. You just don't. Like addressing things on that level, right? You get superficiality now in, you know, these movies that are like really about stupid things, like really stupid movies. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my wife and I have been, you know, scrolling through the movies that are available for us to watch, okay? And they're so terrible. I mean, they're like so stupid. There is no shortage of stupid movies available to the public. And, you know, I don't know how much you know about filmmaking, okay? But I do know a little bit, having been in a couple of films myself and having actually, you know, made music for some films as well, okay? There's a lot of money behind these movies. Like if you see a movie available on cable or something for you to watch, there's a budget behind that movie. I mean, we're talking a lot of money sometimes. And they're still, regardless of how much money is spent, they're really stupid movies. Like they're terrible ideas, you know? Do you know what I mean? Do you even agree with me? You may or may not, but you know, this is something I kind of have been, you know, thinking about a lot because, you know, night after night, you know, we're scrolling through something to watch and oh my gosh, like some of these movies are so dumb. Like I can't believe somebody funded that, you know? What a stupid idea. I mean, I'm constantly thinking of movie plots. I mean, I could rattle off 5 of them for you right now. That would be better than half that crap that's available, you know? So, you know, hence, my wife and I have turned to Turner Classic Movies, right? We're going back now to this time where film was different and the world was different and what was considered important was different. So, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you see why it's interesting to me? And one of the things I've noticed about modern films that I don't like, and you may or may not agree, well, actually, there's a few things. One, I'm like sick of comic book movies, okay? Like, I don't know. Oh, comic books are fine, you know? I had a lot of friends growing up who were really into that kind of thing, right? And I understand that, and that's cool. And now those friends of mine, that were kids going to the comic book store, well, they're adults now, and they're not just like interns or working at film companies. They're like the guys who own the companies now, So we have this massive wave of comic book films because they're successful, because people like them, but probably mostly because the generation that I grew up in is now in charge, and they're deciding what films are going to be made. And they grew up with X-Men, and they grew up with Hellboy, and they grew up with Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, right? I was never really into that, I'm not one of those guys who is really into Star Wars, I'm just not. I'll probably never go to Comic-Con, I'll probably never participate in that. I'm not interested in that, so now, if you want to see a film that's, a blockbuster type film, it's going to be a comic book character kind of situation. And I don't know. I mean, it's great, 3, 4, or 5 times, but come on, change the record. I mean, somebody please start making different movies, right? And another thing about modern film that I don't really like, that it's just all the time, they edit the films and they make the films in such a way where they're fast-paced. You don't even have a chance to really register what's happening on the screen, and they cut to something else. It's just cut, like machine gunning, shots of film into your eyes, and there's no real tempo or pace. It's just like a video game. And I think that's why that is the way it is because they're trying to make films that appeal to young kids who are used to video games and stuff like that. And, that fast edit kind of thing, high energy, fast paced footage or content, right? So it's for me anyway, okay, I'm almost 50 years old. For me, it's kind of annoying, I get it. I get that you want to express in your film that action is taking place and it's high energy, right? But you don't even give me a chance to understand what is happening. It's being edited so quickly. It's being fired at me so quickly that I don't even really know what's going on. And subsequently, after about, 15 or 20 minutes, I don't really care anymore. Next movie, And I guess it speaks to that whole thing. I've talked about it before where, there's this generation of people, myself included, who still like to watch films and still like to find new music. And, we're not dead. We're alive. We're still, actively, participating in pop culture. We're still here. And there's really not a whole lot of content that's made for us. There's a huge gap, folks. Let me tell you. I can see it, and I can feel it, and I know it, okay? There is a huge gap in the market. And man, if you're out there listening to this, you're a 50-something-year-old, 40-something-year-old, or even 30-something-year-old filmmaker, man, you have a window that you can fill. You have a gap that you could just flood with films that are made for people who don't play video games all day, and don't read comic books, Yeah, that's it. You know what I'm saying? You have to know what I'm saying, right? You may disagree, but you can't deny it, right? I mean, a lot of the times it's just like, I'm not interested. I'm not interested, you know? For years I had to resort to stuff like documentary films just because it was like, it had some level of intelligence and logic and, was made for adults, people who want to think about stuff or figure things out, but I guess that's silly too. I mean, part of the fun, I guess, of music and films and books and all that kind of stuff is the escapism, right? But, what am I even talking about? I don't know. It's just how I feel. Anyway, back to this idea, okay? One more thing I don't like about modern film, okay, is that, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but maybe for the past 10 or even 15 or 20 years, okay, there's been like this trend in filmmaking where they put like these filters on the film so that it like darkens the film. And a lot of the movies that are coming out now are really dimly lit and dark, and the best example I could think of, in case you're trying to figure out what I'm talking about, okay, there's a movie called Sleepy Hollow. Okay, fantastic film, a masterpiece. Okay, literally, I think it's a masterpiece. Tim Burton, I mean, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. Okay, and better than any book about Sleepy Hollow. Okay, in my opinion, the film is a masterpiece. But the next time you watch it, pay attention to the darkness of every single shot in that film, except for the handful of maybe 1, 2, or 3 different shots where it's brightly lit. But for the majority of the film, it's like dark. And a lot of the films that are made nowadays are dark. And one of the biggest differences between modern film and these Turner Classic films, especially the Technicolor films, is that they're brightly lit and the colors are brilliant. The palette of color is so beautiful. And I mean, to look at, it's like easy on the eyes to see it, who's really good at that in modern film, okay, who's really good with use of color, in my opinion, is Woody Allen. I don't know if you've watched any of the films that Woody Allen has put out in maybe the past 10 or 15 years, okay? But when you watch his newer films, the ones that have come out in the past 10 or 15 years, his use of color and light and shade is so masterfully done. I mean, the stories are good, the acting is always good, the plots are always good, but we're talking about cinematography today, right? And he is a master at that. I mean, I watch his films and the shots, the colors, the light, the way he sets it up and the way he's using that camera lens, the way he's sculpting what you see, vivid colors and great rich colors, and you just don't see it done like that too much nowadays. There are a handful, but I would say the best example I could think of is Woody Allen. Oh my gosh, he has a film, actually, it's called A Midnight in Paris, I believe. And, for you happy innovators out there that are listening to me say that title right now, you're nodding your heads, because that film is amazing, okay? The story is great, the acting is great, it's contemporary, it's modern, it's not old-fashioned, but he, I won't spoil the movie for you, but do yourself a favor and watch A Midnight in Paris by Woody Allen, okay? And pay attention to the colors. Pay attention to the light, you know? And then compare it to any other film that's coming out right now. And you'll see it's like so different, you know? And like I was saying, what I was alluding to with these Turner Classic Films is like, you know, a lot of these films are like the era of Technicolor, you know, where they were just coming out of black and white, and color was a big deal, you know, and you can see it. You can see it in these films, you know. The storylines are better, even. They're more interesting, even though they're older. In fact, sometimes it's like it's more interesting because they're older, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of things that have changed since, you know, a film that was made in 1950 or 1960. There's a lot of things that have changed socially, economically, geopolitically. I mean, so much has changed. So you kind of get like a window back in time to what was acceptable and what was, you know, normal behavior. You know, how did women conduct themselves? What was acceptable? You know, how did young men conduct themselves? What was acceptable? Do you follow me? It's a really interesting thing to kind of think about. It really is. At least to me it is, you know, and like I said, my wife and I have just been kind of, you know, going through once in a while, you know, these Turner Classic Films for a while now, probably about a year, maybe more now. But it's fantastic. It really is. I mean, every once in a while, you'll get a film that's kind of stupid, you know, and not made well or something, and it's a classic or something. But every once in a while, probably more often than not, we stumble across a film, you know, and we'll just give it a shot, give it a test, you know, we'll just give it a shot, and we're surprised, you know, we're stunned. You know, we have this thing, we call it the 5-minute rule. We'll start watching a film for 5 minutes. And within 5 minutes, if we're not interested anymore, next film, right? You'd be surprised how often my wife and I will, you know, go past the 5 minutes. But we're engaged. You know, we're in the film. We're into the story. Very masterfully done. We just saw a film actually last night with Audrey Hepburn and Richard Crenna when he was really young. I forget what it was called. Wait Until Dark, I think the name of the film was. Oh, it's a shame I don't remember the name. Anyway, great. What a great story for a film, you know. It was done really well for that time. You know, it was done really well. Of course, you know, a lot of things have changed since that movie was made. But, you know, there again, it leads me to this idea, like, why don't young filmmakers see that film and go, that can be done now? Like, that movie can be revisited and redone. That plot could be done again and done really well in a modern context with modern cinematography, right? You know, I guess, you know, sometimes I wonder if I get overly passionate about this kind of stuff because, you know, maybe, I don't know, normal people don't really care that much about film and cinematography and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, it's not like I've devoted my life to it, but I do care about it. I care about what I see and what I hear. I care about music and film and art. Like, that matters to me. You know, I'm still thirsty for new stuff. You know, I'm always looking for new stuff. And I guess it's just kind of like a bummer in a way that, you know, when I want to see a new film that'll really blow me away, I can't really find one. Every once in a while I'll find one, you know, a newer film. It's like, wow, that was actually really good. I can't believe it was as good as it was, you know. But most of the time, it's just like, who paid for this? Like, whose idea was like Ninja Cat, you know, like, I don't know what's going on in this world, you know, like, why did someone fund that movie? I don't know. I just don't understand it. I never will. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna grab a sip of coffee here, take a breath, you know. Coffee. I love coffee. Anyway, that film, Wait Until Dark. I'll give you the plot really quick, just in case you are interested in checking it out. Okay? Basically what the story is that there's these drug dealers, okay, in Europe, and they store a bunch of heroin inside of this doll, okay? And the doll is on an airplane with this woman, and she's going overseas to America to deliver this doll, okay? And when she's getting off the airplane in the United States, she sees like some guy that's like gonna hurt her or take the drugs or something. So she takes the doll and she gives it to this guy that she traveled with on the plane, and she just asks him to hold the doll for her, okay? And so then the story begins, okay? And Audrey Hepburn, okay, is married to the guy who now has the doll, okay? And these drug dealers are trying to get the doll. Like, they want the doll back so they can, you know, sell the drugs, right? 1960s, this movie came out, okay? And the twist in the plot is that Audrey Hepburn is blind, okay? And all things considered, I mean, Audrey Hepburn did a great job of acting like she was blind. It was pretty well done. And of course she's gorgeous, you know. I mean, Audrey Hepburn, you know, she's beautiful, you know. So there's the plot, okay? A blind woman has this doll. Her husband is kind of like gone, you know, and these drug dealers are coming to her apartment in New York City to get this doll. And I'll let you watch the story to see what happens. But it was just a really interesting thing. It's one of those films that we stumbled across, and it's like, you know what? I'd watch it again. I would watch it again. And, you know, of course, you know, because it's really nice to watch Audrey Hepburn running around. I mean, I guess we could take a minute to talk about that a little, right? You know? I mean, Audrey Hepburn. Wow. You know, this woman. You know what's funny is, I'll tell you a little funny story. You know, growing up in my house, when I was a little kid, my father wouldn't swear. Okay, he didn't cuss. He does now that we're older, you know, and we can talk and stuff, talk openly, and he'll drop, you know, the S and the Fs and the, you know, not so much the Fs. That's not true. My father doesn't drop F-bombs too much, but when we were younger, instead of swearing, okay, my father would say Toyota, okay? So, like, instead of saying, like, holy shit, I can't believe that, okay, he would go, Toyota, I can't believe that, you know? And, you know, I still say it. You don't know how many times I've been doing this podcast and I had to stop myself, okay, from saying Toyota. You know, I can't believe that, because, you know, you wouldn't understand what I was talking about. But it's kind of funny because my wife knows my father really well. She's known him for years before her and I got together, you know. And so she says it too. We both do. We'll both, you know, instead of, you know, dropping an F-bomb or some other expletive, you know, we'll say Toyota, you know. I think that's funny. Only in my house. Toyota. So, hey, now that I've given you the explanation, maybe I'll say it in the future. You know, I won't hold back, you know, my Toyotas from you. Oh, anyway, so I guess I've bloviated enough for a day, you know? Another Singularity podcast talking about films, you know? But this stuff matters, doesn't it? I mean, it matters to me. It matters to me, you know? And who knows, maybe somewhere down the line, I don't know. I've been making a lot of videos, you know? I've been shooting videos and setting up shots and lighting and camera angles and kind of trying to think of a new thing and a new way and trying to make it happen, you know? Maybe, somewhere down the line, I'll try my hand at actually shooting a film. I have thought about it. My wife has always told me, oh, you should do it, you know? I'm like, Toyota, I can't make a film. No, but I might. Who knows? Something to think about. Anyway, so my happy innovators, until next time, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy.